Hello. Are we here? Let's have a look. Hello, everyone. Hi. Glad to see lots of you have also got a cup of tea. Let's have a look what everybody is working on. I hope you've all brought a craft project with you. We've got here Thimble Wolf. Hello. Got you knitting. You inspired me to start learning. Oh, that's amazing. Well, good luck with your scarf, your first project, or one of your first projects, or first proper project, sorry. Tea is all made. Tea and knitting already. Mindful moments in New York. Hello. Hello from Germany, from Birmingham, Yorkshire. Brew already made. Oh, lovely, Michelle. Love that. Love that. Proper Yorkshire brew. Knitting a jumper. Hopefully I can finish it this year. Oh, I know that feeling, yeah. Hi, Ollie in Brighton. I'm basting together something I cut out before the pandemic and seeing how much I have to change. Yeah, I've got a few of those projects as well. I hope you can all hear me, by the way, because I'm using the microphone on my headphones and I have no idea how loud or quiet it is. So just let me know how things are going. Oh, tea and popcorn. Lovely. Working on a temperature blanket. In the UK, it'll be mostly blues, I'm guessing. Oh, gosh, so many people here. Hi. Hello from Dorset, from Norfolk, from the US, Washington State. Knitting a tank top, I think. I like that. Hi, Bookcat. Hello from the Netherlands, from Poland. Winter hat by spring. More knitting going on. Double knitting, trying out double knitting, Emily. Knitting socks, knitting a new lace shawl. Even from Milan, from Milwaukee. Somebody's trying to figure out their knitting machine. Yeah, I still need to figure out how to use mine. Hello, hi, everyone. Oh my goodness, good audio. Thank you, Tony, for letting me know. Been working on a cowl sweater. Oh, sounds lovely. Yes, hello, welcome to, it seems that everything's up and running and working, so I might as well get into the swing of things. Welcome to the Retro Claude Not New Year's Eve party. Yay! If you weren't around last year, which probably most of you weren't because my channel was quite a bit smaller then, and I certainly did a lot less knitting content. So if you're a knitter, you might be new to Retro Claude world. New Year's Eve is my favourite holiday. I'm one of the few people who seems to like it. But yeah, it's one of my, I don't know, I think it's always good to reflect on and think about the future. And I don't often let myself do that as somebody with a chronic condition. You know, it's can be difficult at times to think about future and where you are in your life compared to where you perceive you should be. That sort of thing. And New Year's the only sort of time of year where I kind of let myself indulge in that. And I find a lot of comfort in it and a lot of joy in knowing I'm still here, basically, and I'm doing all right. And I'm, despite everything, we made it through. Oh, I can see quite a few were here last year. Oh, that's lovely. Thanks for sticking around. So last year, I was working on a Christmas garland, which I haven't finished. So I sort of decided to myself, maybe I should abandon that project. I'm not entirely sure it's going to ever get done. It was quite fiddly to do, and I'm not that enthusiastic about it. So, oh well. But what I thought I would do is, especially seeing as I've been doing a bit more knitting this year and a lot less sewing, thanks to being very ill with COVID at the beginning of the year. And you have probably been following along with my stash busting series. One of the things that somebody suggested to use up small quantities of yarn was to make pom-poms. Now, I've done that a couple of times before with the cardboard circles, and I've never really gotten on with it. But then I saw Nanny from Seamstress. She has this series where she tries out sewing gadgets. And I really love that series because obviously a lot of those sort of tools and gadgets can be really helpful for access needs. They can be aids, if you like, to help you keep sewing. So I love her Keep or Yeet, as she calls it, series. And one of the things she tested out was pom-pom makers. And I've never had a go with these. So I bought myself some, because the other thing is she is collecting pom-poms from subscribers to celebrate when she hits 100,000 subscribers. She's going to make a dress out of 100,000 pom-poms. So she needs quite a few. So I thought I would contribute to this mission by making some pom-poms tonight here on the stream from some of my odds and ends of yarn, and see if I can't make these contraptions work. So I'll just pause the talking for a second and catch up on my messages. I've had to put slow mode on because there's quite a few more here than there were last year, and I can't read that quick. Oh, lots of you were here. Oh, last year. Thank you. Discovered the channel this past year, so new to the live stream. Welcome. Is that Ali Little Legs? Hello. Hello from the Midlands. Oh, kept me company while I knit in bed with COVID. Oh gosh, yeah, sorry. Hope you feel better soon. Pom-pom maker this year and they rock. Oh, excellent. Love those pom-pom makers. I can make a tassel, but my pom-poms always come out wonky. Yeah, that's what I'm a bit nervous about. Mine have never worked brilliantly. Susie's also been doing more knitting and crochet. Congratulations on the arrival of your baby, though. With my pom-pom makers, I made a wreath last year, never again. Took over a month. Oh, okay. Somebody's taken up weaving in the new year. Oh, a 1960s weaving loom. Oh, I like the sound of that. I'd love to learn weaving. It's one of those, it's like spinning. They're on my sort of like, you know how they say that knitting is a gateway craft to all the other yarn crafts? Yeah, now I want to try them all. Somebody suggested I make the size bigger than I need and cut it down. That's the thing. So this geezer is supposedly the size. Nanny has requested pom-poms that are 2.5 centimeters. That's 1 inch. And this is supposedly the size of the gadget to make those. But I cannot believe that you get a 1 inch pom-pom out of this tiny little thing. So I've got the size bigger here as well. This is 38 mil. Don't ask me how many inches that is. So I thought I'd try both and see what I get, because I also know from watching Nanny's video, it's better if you don't overfill them. So let's see what we've got. So I've got a bag of odds and ends, and I've got various weights in here. So I've got quite a lot of chunky leftovers, but I don't know, like this is some of the leftover from my 1930s unusual knit that I made, but I don't know how many times I'm going to be able to wrap this very chunky yarn around here. So I might start with a finer one. Got some 4-ply in here. Let's give that a go. So here I have some scrap. This was from when I made those golf stockings, those men's golf stockings, which is a pattern you can find in my Ko-fi shop for free if you're interested in knitting golf stockings. They're like knee-high socks, basically. And to keep the stripes consistent, it was a self-striping yarn. I had to keep winding bits off, and I've got lots of random bits like this left, so I thought I'd use these first of all. So pom-pom garlands, apparently, they several people I've seen have made a lot of pom-poms and are swearing off it ever again. So let's see how I get on. This has a different effect. Oh, thank you, Zoe, for that. You can use tulle to make pom-poms as well. Oh, interesting. It's a tabletop. Ooh, my seams from a sewing project. Lovely. Oh, you inspired to finish it from my videos. Thanks. That's lovely. So one of the thing about a live stream is it's kind of awkward talking to yourself. So, and I'm doing all right today, but I'm not at my most energetic, shall we say, a little bit low energy. So this is supposed to be a Q&A, and I have got some questions prepared. So I thought I'll just chat through them as I sort of give this a go. So where are the instructions? Behind the camera or the laptop even. It's one of these. I bought the cheap generic ones, but the instructions are not great. I open the blue part. Okay, mine isn't blue. Will be wrapped in blue plastic part of the wool. Okay. Shall we? So do I do it in 2 halves? Do I wrap this half and then wrap this half in yarn? Oh, I'm guessing so. I should have watched a video, shouldn't I? Yeah, 2 halves. Thanks, Zoe. Thanks. Okay. And is it? Right. Let's see. Let's see how this goes. 2 halves and then tie it together. All right. Okay. So this is a lot easier than doing it with a cardboard. I can feel already. Wrap the 2 halves. Make sure you only wrap the curved part. Oh, thank you for that, Sim Sam Sammy. I did wonder about that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so my first question, I think, was on the community tab. I had some. Yes, let's have a look. So my first question was from Miss Meerkat, I think that is, or Miss Me A Cat. Can you talk about your theatre costuming work, especially when disabled? I'm looking at moving into costuming for museums, but find tight deadlines hard with my ME CFS. Yeah, I can talk about it. I don't know if I'll give you a satisfying answer, though, I'm afraid. So if you don't know, that's how I got involved in costuming. I'm originally a theatre costumer, and I trained, I went to drama school here in the UK, and I trained as a theatre costumer, and I worked for several years professionally in the West End, both backstage as a dresser and a wardrobe assistant, and also as a freelance maker. And part of the reason I had to give it up was because it was too much with my ME. I do still occasionally make commissions for theatre and occasionally film, less often. I think that looks about right. That looks quite full. So do I just cut this like that and do the other side? Sort of tuck that in there. Maybe that will hold it in place. So, somebody's just giving me a tip. Zoe, again. Zoe's made a lot of pom-poms. I recommend very sharp embroidery scissors when you finish to cut the bits. Smaller blades get in the cracks easier. Yeah, I've got my little orange ones here. Hopefully they'll be good enough. Yeah, so I do still occasionally take theatre commissions, but the way I make it work for me is I only take on deliberately easy projects that are kind of dull, because it's a means to an end for me. You know, it's a case of I need money, I need to get paid for this. So quite often I have friends in the theatre industry still, and they ring me up and they say, for this production that I'm working on, we need a whole load of Victorian petticoats making. Can you make them? And we'll pay you per skirt. So quite often I do it piecework that way. And I say, yeah, sure. And I run them up in my own time. I use my own pacing methods. I use task batching, all those things that you're familiar with from my channel. And I deliberately, if it's a short deadline, I don't take it on, because I'm not doing that to myself. You know, as much as it's nice to have the money, it's not worth my health. It just isn't. So that's one of the reasons why I started on YouTube, was because I could, it's a more sustainable income and it's better for me. So yeah, so I practice what I preach. That's the reason why I talk so much about doing all these things. The reason why I've kind of come into this method of working, if you like, that I talk about often on YouTube, is because I've had a lot of years of practice of, you know, I know how to do things most efficiently, to save the most energy, to, you know, make sure I'm going to be healthy, to not waste time, to not make mistakes, because the thing is, that is a big part of, you know, if you are self-employed and you're making, if you make a mistake, it's coming out of, you know, if you're getting paid a set fee for a particular item, you know, and you will budgeted however many weeks and it takes you an extra week because you've cocked something up, you know, that's money out of your pocket basically, isn't it? So that's how I came about this method of kind of a super efficient, energy efficient sewing. But it's a struggle, and I don't do very many commissions anymore because I want to focus my energy on YouTube, and I do other things as well now. But it's hard. It's hard. So I hope that answers your question, Miss Meerkat. I'm afraid it's not a particularly optimistic answer, but that's how I manage it. So let's have a look at this. Oh, hello. You're here. Good. I'm glad you're here, Miss Meerkat. Let me have a sip of my tea. So where's my instructions? So now I snip it and then I tie it. Hard, taut. Okay. Let's give it a go. I'll concentrate on this for a bit and then I'll come back to the question. Oh, God. I'm not sure my scissors are sharp enough at the end, actually, but these are the sharpest ones I have, so. Oh. Okay. Oh, I've pulled a bit out. Whoops. And then I need a length of this to tie it. So this is the bit that confuses me. Does it? Oh, I see. It's pinned in the middle. Right, that makes it a lot easier. I think I've just realized how these work. And then pull taut, hard, as the instructions said. Let's tie at the other end as well, just in case. So then how do I get this off here? I'm guessing I open up my plastic bits like this and then it pulls apart. Yeah. I didn't know I needed so much strength. Am I doing it wrong? Am I pulling the wrong bit? Ha! I've done it. Let's see how it turned out. Okay. I don't think that really worked. I think I need to tie it with thinner thread or something. For such a small pom-pom, at least, anyway. I also don't think... Oh, no, maybe that is 1 inch in diameter. I've got my gridded mat. That's what I'm looking at. It's a bit... I think they'll need trimming up, but I don't have anything to trim the ends into. Okay, I'm just going to find some thread. Oh, look, there's some thread here. Because I think I need to tie them with thread as opposed to yarn, because it's making it like a... I don't know, like a wheat sheaf sort of shape as opposed to a pom-pom. Just needs a fluff and a trim. Thanks. Well, at least I did it right. This can be the toile. Okay. So I'm going to come back to questions in the chat because I have asked on Instagram as well and on the community tab. So I'll prioritize those first as we go through. So the next question came from Barbara Young. Sort of the same question. Where did you learn your craft and what is your most favorite dress that you have made? So I think I answered that one. I learnt my craft at university. I went to drama school. I went to a small independent drama school on the outskirts of London called Rose Bruford. You can probably look it up if you're interested in that sort of thing. I'm probably still on their website in several videos. That's probably embarrassing. But yeah, maybe not. It was quite a long time ago now, actually. I graduated. But yeah, it was a great course. I really enjoyed my time there. I recommend it to people still. So these things change with time though. So I don't know if the same staff are there, if the courses run differently anymore. But that's how I learned to sew. I went to university. I did GCSE textiles, I did A-level textiles, and then I did a sewing degree, essentially, or a costuming degree. It's one of those things, if in the UK now, if you want to get into costuming professionally, the only real entry method is to do a university course. You can do it with experience, but you have to know somebody. So you either have to go the nepotism route or you have to go the university route, which sort of sets you up with the skills and the contacts, and there is more of an established path to do work placements. A big part of the issue with getting into costuming is that a lot of people no longer take people on work experience or like as interns because of fears of exploitation, which I think is a good thing. So a lot of big production companies, whether that's film or theatre, they only take interns or people on work placement who are on a registered, who it counts towards their degree. You know, they're doing it as part of a module to get a qualification. They don't just take people willy-nilly who want experience, because that's exploitation. But that then means if you're not in a degree course, how do you get any experience? Which is hard, particularly given the fact that there's a massive recruitment issue at the minute in costuming in Britain. So now might be a good time to try. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I did. I did a degree. As for my favorite thing I've ever made, this question has come up several times. Of projects that you've seen, I think my Gunny Saxmas dress from last year is my favorite. It was a bit of a roller coaster making that dress emotionally, and I've worn it a lot this holiday season, this Christmas, and it fits beautifully. It really came out the way I imagined it in my head. I really felt like I captured the essence of the era and of the style. And I get loads of compliments on it. I really love that dress. So I might make another one from that pattern, which is a little less kitschy, because that's the only thing about, I don't tend to make a lot of Christmas or like Halloween themed stuff because I'm not a fan of anything particularly kitschy. And it's just borderline kitsch for me, that Gunny Sachs dress. So I might make another one. So that's my favorite dress that I've made. Hello. Can be your first pancake pom-pom. Yeah, the first one's never good. More yarn seemed possible to get a full result. Okay, it's so tiny. Yeah, it seems really tiny, but this was the size Nanny requested, so we're going with it. Fluff them over a pot of boiling water. Oh, thanks for the tip, Fanny. Yeah, I try and be honest. I think that's the thing with just read your comment, Roman. Or my answers are very realistic. The result is the reason is when you do have like a ability limiting condition or energy limiting condition, you have to be so honest about your own ability, you have to be realistic about what you can achieve. And so I don't like to lead people on really with false hope. You know, working in costume is hard. It's tough. That's why I do it on YouTube now, because I can do it at my own pace. And it's difficult to get into, and you have to be very passionate about it. Okay, so those were the community tab questions. These are my Instagram questions. So the first one is, how often do you burn yourself while ironing? Since I've gotten my little iron, not very much. So that's good. So I can recommend it for that reason. But yeah, I tend to be pretty careful. I do have a little bit of sort of like, I can't sense heat in my hands, particularly as well if I'm tired and things like that. I just sort of, I don't know, I forget that things are hot and things like that, which can be a bit of an issue. So I don't burn myself a lot, but I also, if I do sort of get a bit too near the iron, I thankfully still have very quick reflexes, so I snap away pretty quickly. So I don't burn myself that badly that often. So what else have we got? What would your dream project to do be? I don't really know. I've had a project that I've wanted to make for a really long time, and I've got the fabric and the embroidery thread I'd need. And that's 1890s Liberty dress. It's been on my board here for ages. You might have spotted it. If you know what that is, they're from the aesthetic dress movement. That's what I wrote my master's thesis on. And I've always wanted to make one because they're actually really simple, but they look very effective. And of course, there's a lot of embroidery. And I did a lot of embroidery when I did Little Dorrit, and I haven't really wanted to do any more embroidery since then. So I've been waiting, rather than force myself to do it, I've been waiting to be in the mood to do that sort of thing again. So maybe 2023 might be the year. I do have to buy a smocking machine though to do it. And it is one of those things, I think with dream projects, quite often you get in your own head about it a little bit and it has to be perfect. And I'm guilty of that. So I think I need to get over it a little bit really and just start. But actually, one of the things that's been holding me back as well is I don't have any Victorian undergarments. I only have Regency undergarments. So I need to make Victorian undergarments and I hate doing that. It also doesn't make very interesting video content. You know, how many videos have you watched about making a chemise and making a petticoat? And I don't think I have anything to say about that, really, anything new to say. So yeah, it's been a bit of a reluctant start on that. However, I am going to an 1840s event next year, which I will need Victorian underwear for. So I have to make it next year. So once I've made the undergarments, that might make the whole process a bit easier to get started for the Liberty dress. So I'm looking forward to that. What was the next one? That was so that's my dream project. Several people asked that one, so thank you. That was from Natalie Soke on Instagram. Somebody asked me, what kind of sewing commissions do you get? I did talk about that a little bit. I don't tend to take private clients just because doing the fittings is so difficult. And I work from home and having people come into my house. Don't know how I feel about that, or having to advertise my address somewhere. No, thanks. So like I say, I tend to mostly get theatre commissions, and they tend to be historical. They tend to be things that you can't buy easily in the shops and you need somebody to make. So I've done a lot of period skirts. I've done several Tudor cloaks. I've done, what else have I done recently? Well, as well, having been so ill this year, it's been a little while since I've really taken any sewing work because I just haven't been well enough to sew. But yeah, things like that. I've made like Edwardian nurses. I've made as well. I quite often take on sort of alterations type jobs as well. So I've sewn a whole load of ribbon onto shirts. You know, somebody sent me a whole load of black shirts that they bought and they needed them to look a bit more jazzy for whatever this show was. And I sewed a bunch of ribbon onto them. And that's the sort of commission I get. Low stress, easy to do, completely manageable with my my energy and everything. And yeah, they suit me perfectly. What was your favorite sewing project ever? See, that's different. So that's the thing. The Gunny Sacks dress is the favorite one I've made on the channel. But my favorite sewing project ever is probably some of my university work. I made, before I was into the 19th century, I was really into 16th century dress, and I made a Elizabethan foundation wear. So I made a set of stays, Elizabethan stays, I made a bum roll, I made a wheel farthingale, and I made a cartridge pleated petticoat. And that was just so interesting to make, and I really enjoyed making those. They're not very impressive to look at because they're all in calico and cotton and things like that, but they were really interesting to make. I've also over the years done a few studying textiles, which is a little bit different to costuming. You have to do a lot of sort of artistic art school stuff, which is not really my thing. I'm not a designer, I'm a maker. You know, I need a brief. I need a design to follow. But I did make, as one of those projects, I made a hat in the shape of a tank. And I didn't know anything about millinery, and I made it out of wire I found in my dad's garden shed and quilt wadding and scraps of fabric and things. And it was based on a Sherman tank. And I had a really satisfying moment where it was sat on the side, ready to in a bag, ready to go to college with me. My dad came downstairs, and he knows a lot about military history. And he went, "Do you know that tank? It looks just like a Sherman tank." And I was like, "Yes, I did it. I got it right." So I have fond memories of that project. So that's probably up there with one of my favorites. Right, let's cut the pom-pom. Let me as well, I'll scroll up and have a look at my comments. Hello, thank you. Hi. Oh, yeah, for context. So GCSE, I did GCSE textiles. So when I was at school, it's since changed. You finished your compulsory education in England age 16. So that was your school leaving certificate, basically. And so I took 12 subjects. Most people take 9 or 10. And so they could be, some of them were compulsory, English, math, science, etc. And others you could choose, you had options. And so they were called your options, what you decided to take. And various things contributed to me randomly taking textiles, basically. I wasn't particularly excited about it, but there was a gap in my timetable. Food tech was oversubscribed and they asked for volunteers to switch to textiles, and I was like, yeah, all right. So that was how I came to do it, basically. But yeah, you do in England, you do lots of subjects until the age of 16, and then you specialize. So you pick 3 usually, or sometimes 4, or in my case 2 because I was ill, to study to a higher level. And that's the A level, advanced level, as opposed to the general level of the G of GCSE. Hello, yep. Do you ever knit with yarn hell devil? I have, but I find, because I'm a continental knitter, I often split the threads and things. Right, let's give this one take 2, see if it's any better. That one, some bits fell off that one. Oh, we're looking a bit better. We're looking a bit better. Yay. Okay. Obviously, I've got some straggly bits, but it's looking a bit more like a pom-pom. They sort of end up a bit oval shaped. Am I doing it wrong, or is that the nature of pom-pom makers? I tell you what, I'm looking for like something to trim ends into. Oh, bear with me. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Where? Right. Have we got that scissor snipping ASMR? There we are. That looks a bit better. Oh, it's cute. It's still a bit egg-shaped, but I'll do some fluffing over the steam, as Fanny suggested. Okay, back to my Instagram questions. And this is from a silver fox in Tasmania. What's an unexpected thing that people might not think of when sewing for asymmetrical bodies? This is an interesting one. Oh no. Is that right? Yeah, I think, no, is it? Oh, I think I broke it. No, I think it's fine. Phew. So yeah, sewing for asymmetrical bodies is something that everybody's asymmetrical. Like that's just the way it is. If you've ever done a couture fitting on anybody, they're always asymmetrical. And by couture, I mean like more than a toile, you know, where you do a very thorough fitting on somebody else as opposed to on yourself when you can't see the back and all of that. So that's something I think people underestimate, but also something I don't see talked about is the fact that if you fit for an asymmetrical body and if you get a perfect skin type fit on an asymmetrical body, it can highlight your asymmetry. So you don't, that might not be what you want. And particularly I find, for example, anything with a very definite vertical line, if I fit it too closely on me, it tilts off like this. And then it makes it really obvious that I'm asymmetrical. Whereas if I make something a bit looser, I get away with it more. And it can be a bit like an arrow, you know, like, look at the wonkiest part of me, which is not necessarily what you want. So I think that's something that people don't necessarily consider when fitting for asymmetry is do you want the center front to follow the body exactly, or do you want the center front to be perpendicular to the floor? You know, the goal is not to necessarily make something fit exactly to the body. You know, we talk about overfitting, and yeah, I think maybe it's okay to deliberately to leave a garment symmetrical for an asymmetrical body. It's what I'm doing with my suit as well, particularly in the skirt for the hips, because I think actually it will create a better balance and a better line than if I fit my skirt on a diagonal and then the skirt will hang on a diagonal. You know, actually what I need to do is make asymmetrical adjustments, but to accommodate to still get a pleasing line, I suppose, is what I'm going for. Yeah, I want to do more about working with asymmetry, but the issue is, of course, I have to fit on myself, and that makes it much more difficult. So what I would do on somebody else is not what I would do on myself, because I can't pin the back, I can't see the back. So I hope that answers your question. I suppose some other things people don't consider is where the garment hangs from. I often see people start fitting a garment for an asymmetrical body at the waist, and I'm like, oh, start at the shoulders. Always start where the garment rests, because you know you make an alteration and everything moves off. And if you get the shoulders right, sometimes with asymmetry, that's enough, particularly if you're going for a perpendicular line and not a completely fitted line to follow the curve of the body. Sometimes just tweaking the shoulders is enough to get it to sit and look symmetrical and fit better. So always start at the shoulders. And what was the next question? Oh, hang on, I'll catch up with the chat. I've watched every chemise, petticoat, undies video I can find. I'd surely watch one more. Well, thanks for that, Danielle. Everyone makes them differently. That's true, they do. I think, and that often holds me back as well, is that I want to make interesting content. You know, this is my primary income source now, and so I want the videos to do well, and that can be inspiring, but it can be a little demoralizing. It can be a little restricting on creativity. You know, like corset content does brilliantly, as we know. All those videos often go viral, And I don't really want to do that. But part of me is like, oh, I should make a corset video. It would probably do really well. Anyway. I took GCSE food instead of textiles because I didn't like the textiles teacher, and our school only had the one teacher. Yeah, my reasons for changing was similar. It was about who was in the class and the teachers and things like that. And it was just a fluke. And that's how I learned to sew. And it's one of those moments, sliding doors moments. I look back on my life and I'm like, wow, that was an important decision, and I didn't even realize it. Oh, somebody got a sewing machine for Christmas. Welcome to the sewing family. Yeah, some discussion about sort of what we would call DT, design technology at school, and home economics and things, and how it's changed. And yeah, unfortunately, the textiles class, it wasn't going to run because there were too few people who signed up, and it was honestly probably one of my favorite subjects. It became my favorite subject, and I used to look forward to, in my packed GCSE schedule, taking 12 subjects. I really used to look forward to going into the sewing studio and sewing for 2 hours straight, because we would have double lessons. And so it would be like a rainy Thursday afternoon in November, and I'd been cramming for whatever science exam I had next. And then I could just come and sew, and the piece of it was fantastic. That's my second cup of tea as well. I had one as I was setting everything up. It's decaf, don't worry. Right, back to Instagram. Let's see where we are. My favorite era to knit. It's probably the 1940s. That's a really basic answer, I know, but I like those. I like the ingenuity of the make, do, and mend era. I like the lightweight lace patterns, as you know. Yeah, and so particularly for like garments that I want to wear, I'm working on this 1840s knitting project, and I am finding that fascinating, because I'm knitting quite a few things, or I want to knit quite a few things for my 1840s project next year. And obviously knitting takes longer than sewing, so I've started this year, and it's just been really interesting to delve into the history of knitting and early patterns, the publishing of early patterns, because you may know I did my master's in Victorian studies, so there's a lot of the classic themes of Victorian studies about advancement in the press and how that changed society and the written word, and periodicals and magazines and how that affected society. All those things, it's all overlapping now in and colonialism, of course, and things like that. It's all overlapping. It's all there in the history of knitting. So I'm having great fun looking into that. But for garments to wear, I always come back to the 40s. Who's next? Oh, so somebody's asked about my knitting style, because I'm a continental knitter. So if you're not a knitter and you don't know what that means, basically it means I knit with the yarn in my left hand, and there are various ways to knit and it produces the same result, and it's generally based on where in the world you are and who taught you. So they're normally named like Portuguese style or English style or German style, continental style, Norwegian style, all those sorts of things. So I was taught English style. I was taught by my mum how to knit when I was a child, and I knit. That's how I learnt, and I always did it that way until about 5 years ago, probably, when I first started getting back into knitting. And because I was also doing a lot of sewing professionally at that time, I just got terrible repetitive strain injury in my right hand. I could barely hold a sewing needle, and it was getting to the point I was having to stop knitting, which I really enjoyed because I had to prioritize work and the use of my right hand for sewing. And then I thought to myself, surely what do left-handers do? And I Googled it, and that was kind of my first exposure to the online knitting community and knitting YouTube. And I found all these tutorials, and I taught myself from YouTube how to do continental knitting. And it just, I mean, it took me a really long while to master continental purling, and I'm not sure I do it right. Or somebody asked me, what's that method called that you're doing when you're purling in one of my knitting videos? And I was like, I don't know. I was just doing it the way I thought was right. Maybe it's not. Yeah, so oops. That's it. I taught myself how to do continental knitting, and for me, I have no idea why. I can do it and it doesn't hurt my right hand, and so I've kept it up, and that's what I do, and that's how I've managed to knit as much as I can and not get repetitive strain injury or carpal tunnel or whatever. Right, focus on the snipping for a little minute to see how we're doing for time. It's 8:15. Well, it is where I am. The concentration on my face, it must look hilarious. Actually, I'll talk about the next question, because somebody's asked me a very specific sewing question. What are the best options for sewing tulle? Use a zigzag stitch, like a very narrow one. I find that helps. You can do the trick where you sew through tissue paper. Turn the tension down on your machine. That helps as well. I've never experimented with needle type. Oh, this has gone wrong. Oh no. Oh no. Can you see what's happened? It's popped open like that, and all the ends have gone everywhere. I think this one might have to go in the bin. Oh. So far I've got one successful pom-pom team. Got distracted. Oh well. So yeah, those are my tips for sewing tulle. I don't do a lot of it if I can avoid it. I did just do it for a project I was working on, and I did not enjoy it. Do you think that's enough for one more pom-pom? Maybe. Somebody's asked, were you trained to draw in all the sewing lines at uni, or is it something you've always done? No, it was something I was trained how to do at uni. I didn't do it before, and I started doing it, and I was like, this is so much easier. Oh my gosh. And I've never looked back. So yeah, that's one of the things. That's why I talk about this often. I've talked about it a lot in Clodmas as well. Have the benefit. Why I like to make sewing videos is because I have so much admiration for people who are self-taught, because how do you make anything work? I don't know, because so much of my sewing, it's the tiny little things where you need somebody to show you, oh, press this knob on the sewing machine and this will happen, and you're like, reverse inside the seam allowance, and it changes everything, and you're like, what? How did what? Ah! Don't think this is going to be enough. Whoops. Oh well. Okay. So yeah, that's why going to uni is great. Professional training is great, but not everybody has access to it, and that's why I like to share my knowledge. So should we try a different yarn? What have I got only a little bit left of? Tell you what, let's try this chunky leftovers I've got here from this. I made all these crochet stars, but I don't like them. They're so meh. So I might unravel them. But let's see if I can't use up these scraps. Is that all of them? Yeah. Okay, moving on. I'm racing through them now. Do I have any problems with my mini iron? Yeah, it doesn't steam anymore. This is Apolia 97. Yeah, my mini iron, unfortunately, has stopped steaming. I think it's just clogged up with scale. I live in a very hard water area, so we often have issues with lime scale, blocking things, corroding things. So I'm going to try descaling it and see if that works. But apart from that, I love my mini iron. I talk about it all the time. So the next question is from Bedford 3998. I can't knit, but love the shape of 1940s jumpers. Could I sew them? Well, probably. It's quite a simple sort of design. Don't know how the ribbing would work, because that's quite crucial. I suppose you could do like a folded hem. Oh, you could definitely do like this one I've got on, which is a slash neck, because quite often they have a high neck and ribbing at the neckline. But yeah, a short sleeve stretch pattern for a t-shirt. They are basically the shape of a t-shirt, and they are kind of the precursor to the t-shirt. Would probably do the trick. And the only thing is you've got to get the shape of the sleeves right to get that pleated sleeve head or the gathered sleeve head, because it's not like a sewn in sleeve head. It's quite square and long and deep. It's a very deep armhole. So you can probably find, actually, I think one of my sewing patterns might have a diagram for sort of pattern shapes, which could be useful if you're trying to sew one instead of knit one. Maybe I'll make a video about it. You've given me an idea. Somebody's asked me, Handmade Lizette has asked, what's my preferred way to finish a seam? Overlocking every time. Fastest, cheapest, most durable in my experience. There's a reason why they do it on commercial garments. I mean, obviously it depends what the fabric is. If it's a slippery fabric, I'll do a French seam. If it's a lightweight fabric, I'll do a French seam. If it's a sheer fabric, I'll do a French seam. But most of the time, for me, I don't like bound. I don't like, what do they call that? A Hong Kong finish? Don't know why they call it that either. But a bound finish, I don't like to do those. They add bulk. They also fray out. Not ideal. Zigzagging, yeah. Pinking. The thing is, modern fabrics are so loosely woven and so cheaply made that pinking doesn't really work unless it's something, a very high quality fabric, like a very high quality cotton, very tightly woven, densely woven. But I don't find pinking a very successful seam finish generally for most things. What else can you do? Like, oh, I suppose you can flat fell things, can't you? That's always pretty successful, but it's more time consuming. So yeah, I'm team overlocking or serging all the way. Do I have any advice or hacks for beginners? Draw on your sewing lines. That's a good piece of advice. What else? I've got to focus on not screwing this up now. Advice for beginners. Go easy on yourself, man. Sewing is hard. And don't compare yourself to people online. It's probably my other advice. It's one of the reasons why it's always difficult to talk about my professional experience, because I don't want to come across as like, oh, I'm such a professional and I know exactly what I'm doing, because I don't. There's still always stuff to learn. But at the same time, I don't want people to look at my channel and think I'm a self-taught beginner and I'm this good, you know, or I'm like thinking, oh my God, how am I ever going to be that good? You know, well, I had 3 years of professional training and a lot of experience. That's how I got to the place where I am. So don't beat yourself up if you don't have that. So yeah, don't compare yourself to other people online, and mark on your sewing lines would be my advice. How's everybody doing? Oh, somebody's reminded me, you can buy ribbing. You can buy pre-made ribbing, which would be a really good option if you want to make your own, if you want to sew your own 1940s style jumpers. Oh, I've been neglecting you. Sorry, I'm having to scroll right the way back up. Oh yeah, we've got discussion about knitting styles. I'm still going. I'm still scrolling. Yeah, people lamenting the lack of sewing education or any kind of home ec at school. Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things, like a lot of art subjects. Not that I think that sewing is necessarily an art subject. I would say it is a craft or a skill in the same way that woodworking and all those other things, technical skills are. ICT, you know, programming, I would say it's in the same category as that. Yeah. Do I have any thoughts on the visible mending trend? I'll come back to that one. This chat is a perfect example of how poorly the school did at placing people into subjects they would do well at and also enjoy. Yeah, I agree. And I was an academic student, and that's why I ended up taking 12 subjects, and I was hideously stressed and hated every minute of it. And so I really treasured my 2 hours in the sewing studio. I'm also a weird continental purler. Yeah, I have no idea how I make it work. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know, but I do it. It works. Oh, recommendations. So if you are a left-hander or you want to learn purling, knitting and purling with the yarn in your left hand, there's quite a few recommendations here as well, but I don't know any of them, so I'm trusting you all. Yeah, as well, if you're a crocheter, a lot of crocheters who struggle with knitting probably try continental style knitting. You might get on with it better because it's more familiar. Oh, hi, Shelley. I'm glad you were able to make the stream. Yeah, Eastern style knitting, I think. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't, as well, it was one of those things I didn't know it had a name for what I did. And people ask me, oh, what's that style you're doing? And I'm like, I have no idea what any of them are, so I'm not the one to ask. Any advice for quilters? Well, I'll come back to that one too. Do I know resources of sizing up knitting patterns? I would recommend watching Roxanne Richardson's channel. She has a lot of videos about the history of knitting and sort of knitting technique, which is not the sort of video I make. But I am hoping to make a how to grade up a vintage knitting pattern to be your size video. It just requires a lot of brain power to do it and headspace. Oh, have I... I cannot get this to work. Yeah, so I'd like to make one because I do think that would make knitting more inclusive and help people. But the other thing is, the reality is sizing up a vintage knitting pattern involves a lot of maths, and there's no way around that. And it would be like an hour-long maths tutorial, basically. And that's hard for a lot of people, and you have to be very enthusiastic about knitting to want to learn how to do that and figure it out for yourself. So I will do it one day, I promise. But for now, I have to focus on making this pom-pom because I don't think the chunky yarn's going to work. Why is this so difficult? I'm a professional. Right, I think I've done it. Let's have a look. Oh, it looks a little bit pathetic. Oh no, I think it's going to be okay, you know. It's cute. Look at it. It's really cute. Ah, I like this. Right, so we have 2 successful pom-poms. Let's try again. Right, back to the Instagram questions for now. What to use instead of silk taffeta, because I am not rich. I like that. I like the way you put that. What to use instead of silk taffeta? Well, I suppose it depends on the project. You want something with body. So, I mean, there is always the option to use polyester taffeta, but if you're set on taffeta. But I don't think that's... The thing is, a lot of historical garments, if this is for a historical project, they were not made in taffeta. They were made in types of fabric we can't get anymore, like bombazine and all that sort of stuff. So for Little Dorrit, I used cotton sateen, which was a touch heavy. But if you can get a lightweight cotton sateen, mine had stretching, didn't really make any difference. because it wasn't a particularly tight garment. If you were using it for like a very fitted Victorian bodice, that might make a difference. So yeah, I'd recommend cotton sateen if you can find it without stretch, because you get that sort of dull sheen that you get from silk for a fraction of the price, and it looks very effective. Can also go in the washing machine, so that helps. And you know, it's not such a heartbreak if you're at an event and somebody spills a cup of tea down you and all those sorts of things. So yeah, cotton sateen is quite a good option. You might be able to get like a polyester fale, F-A-I-L-L-E, I think. C'est français. I've worked with those for historical projects before, and they look quite effective. Oh, come to the end of that one. What else have I got here? Dream project. I've done that one. Liberty dress. Do you make your own patterns or use commercial ones? I do make my own patterns. I predominantly use commercial ones because I like to make projects that for YouTube where other people can make it as well. There's also an element of, particularly when I first started on YouTube, I made a lot of reproduction patterns because I was hoping people were going to Google tutorial for Simplicity 8913 or whatever it is and find my channel. That was quite a good strategy. It worked. I still get people who comment on things like, oh, just bought this pattern. Thank you so much for this video. So it was quite a good strategy. But I can make my own patterns. I do make my own patterns. I'm hoping to do more of that next year with this 1840s project, because I'll probably just make a pattern from scratch for that, because 1840s stuff is really simply cut. And I want to do more pattern cutting. Of my own, you know, working with a block. I want to make that sort of content for you because, sorry, focusing on my pom-pom. Yeah, because fitting with a unusual body. Oh, wrong step. Got to cut it first, haven't I? I think I'm going to have to scrap that bit. It's not going to stay in. You know, it can be hard when you're not able-bodied to fit and know what to do and make alterations on yourself, and the whole process is tiring. So making a block or a sloper once is probably a very energy-efficient way of doing it. And I keep thinking to myself, I should make that. It would be much more efficient if I had a sloper that fitted me. So I want to do that and take you through the process as well. But I think I'm just going to buy a sloper pattern. I know how to draft my own. I have lots of pattern drafting books. But again, it comes back to the maths. And as much as I enjoy sewing maths, not everybody does. And if the whole point of my channel is about making things easier and more accessible for people, skipping the maths step would probably be a good idea. Oh, okay, that's the last Instagram one. Yay, we made it. So let's go back to this. Maria would like to learn knitting. I'm not the best person because I didn't learn from the internet really, or from a book or anything like that. I have been knitting since I was 10 years old. So there are lots of recommendations in the chat. So I recommend you look for knitting recommendations in the chat here. Have I ever tried nooking? No, I haven't. I've never heard of that. I've also never tried Tunisian crochet, but I would like to, because I've seen quite a few 1930s patterns for that, and I'd like to give that a go. Yeah, I'm going to put vinegar in my iron to descale it. People are suggesting that. Yeah, that's what I intend to do. I've done it before to other appliances with quite a lot of success, like kettles, as an avid tea drinker. So hopefully that will sort my iron right out. Oh, here we are. Nimble Needles is good for learning continental knitting. We have a recommendation from Thimblewolf. Thank you very much. Try any books you buy. Sweatshirt ribbing, yeah. Another recommendation for knitting very pink knits. Thank you, Anastasia. Nimble Needles has come up again. Oh, it jumped. Sorry about that. Let's have a look. Yeah, somebody else has recommended shop around and see what works for you. I agree, because sometimes you watch a YouTube tutorial and you're like, I have no idea what's going on, and then you watch a different one and you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense now. So oh, somebody's asked about my Claude toile. So a batwing armhole sleeve. Do you remember the 80s? So a batwing is kind of a very low, continuous, all-in-one, and it's very low and baggy. It's almost like the MC Hammer trouser, but for a sleeve, is the best way I could describe it. It's very kind of connected to the bodice still, and there's lots of extra baggy fabric in there. And they were also popular in the 40s, but not in the exaggerated way that they were in the 80s. I have to concentrate, bear with me. Oh, okay. That went terribly. My thread snapped. Let's start again. Let's read some more questions. Oh, somebody's recommended. Oh, it's Miss Mia Cat. Hello again. The Good Stitch has a 50% sale on the moment with amazing red Regency silk for £6 a metre. So if anybody is in the market for silk, we know where to go. For vintage patterns that somebody has already graded up. I have a few on my Ravelry for free. If you're looking for vintage patterns that have been graded up, I know Subversive Femme has a few as well, and she also has her Curvy Month series where she's collected plus size vintage patterns that as in not just 34 bust patterns over the years, on her blog, and quite a few of those are free as well. Oh, somebody's mentioned that, Subversive Femme. Yeah, knitting tutorials can be frustrating. Okay, so there are a few questions. Let me scroll back up. I should have saved them or something here. Can't remember what people have been asking me. Quite a few people asked about fashion school. I think I covered that, didn't I? Oh yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. I know it's not quite here yet, but I hope you've had a good 2022 as best as you can, and I wish you a happy 2023. Somebody's also recommended here buying underwear you don't want to make. That is an option. It's just not an option for me. The pom-poms are not for me. They're for Nanny from Seamstressed for her 100,000 pom-pom project. Yeah. Somebody's grandfather was an operator in a Sherman tank, and I made a hat in that shape. Yeah, that's fascinating. I need an assistant. I can't keep up. I know there was one about visible mending. I found it. Right. So yeah, how do I feel about visible mending? I have mixed feelings about it. You know, I love it. I'm all about that sustainability. Mend your clothes. I love it. I do, however, not like the look of visible mends. And that's just personal preference. I think it looks really... That's a cultural reference nobody will get. I think it looks really panto. So we have this theatre tradition in Britain around the holiday season, known as pantomime, and it's lots of traditional fairy stories. So a lot of the costumes are sort of olden days fantasy based, and they tend to have a certain look. And one of the things they do for the poor characters is they sew on comedically large patches with visible stitching, in often bright colours, in contrasting colours, that sort of thing. And that's what visible mending reminds me of. So I'm all for mending, but I like my mends to be a bit subtler than giant stitches. And I just pulled off a chunk of my pom-pom out. You know, shibori techniques and things like that. Beautiful, but I don't know how I feel about them on my jeans. I don't know, maybe that's also partly like a cultural thing about looking. I like to look professional and chic and turned out at all times. And that doesn't fit with my aesthetic, I suppose, is how I feel about it. Got another successful pom-pom, finally. Okay, there we are. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, I have mixed feelings about it. Somebody asked about tips for somebody who's a quilter making garments. I'll come back. I've just seen a question here, which I'll answer first, which is, will I do or have I done a video about equipment used to make crafting easier? I haven't done one specifically about equipment, but I have done one about crafting with a disability or sewing with a disability. Lots of people have requested a knitting with a disability video. That one's a little more difficult to make because a lot of the advice is the same. But as well, I don't find knitting as tiring or difficult. So I'm not entirely sure what I would recommend to you. As for equipment, the thing with recommending equipment is it's so personal. What works for me may not work for you. And it's also a lot. I haven't tried a lot of things. So there might be some great options for people. And that's the other thing. A lot of people often recommend electric scissors. And then I had somebody, or to me, recommend electric scissors. And then I had somebody in my comment section say they're actually really heavy. So they might be more fatiguing for you to use if you have fatigue issues, whereas they might help somebody who's got motor issues. So make sure you try before you buy. And that's been difficult in the old Panini to go into shops and try things like that. I also live in a rural area, so just finding a stockist for that sort of thing is difficult for me. So I have considered doing one. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do an updated one. But yeah, it's a difficult one, I think. So any advice for people who traditionally quilters but want to step into the garment making world? I would say if you're a quilter, you already have a lot of the skills you need to make a garment. Machine handling, precision, you know, creativity, artistry, you know what colors go together, that sort of thing. I would say if you are a quilter, start with a garment in a firm woven cotton that you're familiar using. Maybe not a quilting cotton, maybe go for a lawn or like a garment weight poplin. I would also say make samples is if you're learning to sew anything, but particularly if you're practicing a new skill of any kind. If you are making a blouse for the first time and it has buttons, practice the buttonholes. You know, get out your manual and play with all the buttonhole settings until you feel really confident that you're going to do it right. You just practice on scraps of fabric. If you're a quilter, you probably have quite a few of those. Practice on scraps of fabric until those little skills that maybe you don't get or are not as confident with as a quilter, you feel happier with. You know, practice putting in zips into scraps of fabric, practice the buttonholes, practice sewing curves. If you're the sort of quilter that only sews straight lines, you know, literally cut some curves into fabric and practice easing them in. You can watch my sleeve tutorial for more about that, you know. I would also say make mock-ups, make toiles, you know. It doesn't have to be, I suppose the thing with a quilt is, I'm imagining, I've never made one, it's quite a long-term project. And so you're probably not used to expecting instant gratification with a quilt. So that is one of the benefits of sewing some garments. And if you are not limited with energy, they can come together very quickly, you know. And so you can be sewing for a couple of hours, 8 hours maybe, over a weekend, and you'll have a garment. So make some practice ones in some inexpensive fabric. And if they don't quite work out right, it's not, you haven't lost much. I would also say the big issue, of course, if you're a quilter, is you're not used to making garments fit. So that's kind of advice for any new sewer, is make things where the fit is not heartbreaking if it goes wrong. So things with positive ease. Skirts are quite a good place to start if you're a person that likes to wear skirts, because you can do a lot of skills like a waistband and a zip and things like that, and have a wearable garment that you like and is pleasant. Maybe don't start with knit fabrics if you're a quilter. That might be something you want to look into, work up to. Start with knitted, with woven fabrics. But yeah, also go for it. It's one of those things. The best way to learn is to give it a go. So you can watch tutorials, you can watch videos and get a sense of the order of garment construction as well. That's probably one of the things that's difficult if you're a quilter, is knowing which bits to do first. But you also get instructions in a sewing pattern, which is helpful. Yeah, so those would be my recommendations. What do I like to watch while knitting and sewing? I don't tend to watch things while I'm knitting and sewing. I do occasionally watch a series in the background when I'm knitting. I tend to knit in the evenings in front of the telly. So I like a sort of drama, crime, mysteries type drama. The only thing is then when it gets a bit tense, I have to stop doing whatever complicated lace pattern I'm doing and just focus on what's happening. And sometimes, you know, there'll be a bit of important mise en scène, you know, something, somebody will reach for something and put something down, and it's like, oh, the watch that he was wearing, that shows he's the murderer, and I'll have missed it because I was looking at my knitting. Things like that. But generally, when I'm sewing, I don't tend to watch anything. I like the quiet. I think it goes back to those days in the workroom as my escape. And I've never really been a person who's enjoyed having the radio on in the background. So I do occasionally listen to audiobooks. I need to buy myself some wireless headphones, though, because these are the only headphones I have. And what keeps happening to me is I'll have my audiobook on and then I'll get up and it'll get caught on the sewing machine. So, yeah, I need to buy myself a pair of wireless headphones so that I can have them in or wear them and move around and not cause myself an injury. Let's keep having a look. Let's keep scrolling. I haven't tried nooking. I think we mentioned that one. Do I have any advice for neatly finishing a waistband on a skirt? Mine looks great until I stitch in the ditch to sew down the folded under back edge. The outside is okay, but the inside is not. My answer there would be to slip stitch it in place instead by hand. I find stitching in the ditch is so difficult, and it never looks, I can never get it to look invisible. So I either have to go deliberate top stitching, so it's not stitching in the ditch, I'm going for deliberate top stitching, and I use my top stitching foot and I make sure it's absolutely, you know, precise top stitching along the edge of the folded waistband. Oh, this one was really successful, this pom-pom. This was double knit weight yarn, so I might do some more of that. Look at it. Oh, it's cute. Oh, it's a bit of a tuft there. Yeah, so that would be, I would say top stitch it, either deliberately and embrace it and it's going to be decorative top stitching and you're going to see it and who cares, or I would hand stitch it. If you're looking for a more couture invisible finish, I would slip stitch it, because those tiny little slip stitches on the right side, you can get those in the ditch from the wrong side a lot easier, and they're a lot more invisible. So when you slip stitch, you'd be slip stitching from the wrong side, but rather than, so you take a tiny little stitch out of the main fabric of the garment in the ditch on the right side, if that makes sense. I hope so. That's my tip. We talked about vintage patterns that have been graded up. I sew and drive in silence. Yeah, I have to drive in silence too. You know when there's like a meme about when you're looking for a parking space and you turn the radio down so you can see better? I'm that person. I skipped a little bit. Yeah, lots of people are recommending Bernadette Banner's book, which of course I feature in. So yeah, it's a great resource for hand sewing. You know, I'm not just saying that because I'm in it. She sent me a copy and I've read it and I was like, there's so much useful information in here. And I think hand sewing is one of those things that they don't teach. Nobody teaches, you know, even it's not in sewing pattern instructions. You don't see it very often. Other sewing YouTubers, like the correct finish for a waistband is a stitch in a ditch. On the commercial pattern, on, you know, if you take somebody like Mimi G's course, something like that, which a lot of people do to learn to sew online, or you listen to podcasts and things like that, they're always talking about it. And I think hand sewing is much better, efficient, stronger, more fun. Nicole Rudolph also does a lot of hand sewing. Yeah, so I have a few hand sewing tutorials on my channel. That's how I started. So if you go right the way back, you'll find a few of mine. They're a little bit, I wasn't very confident on camera, shall we say. Oh, hello. Hi, Micah. How far can you get with hand sewing? You can sew an entire garment by hand. Basically, every garment ever made in history was sewn entirely by hand. That's probably a bold statement, and actually the rate of consumption that we can make clothes at now, that's probably not quite accurate. But up until about 1850, every item of clothing was entirely made by hand. So all those 18th century gowns, all those 17th century ruffs were stitched by hand. So you can get very far with hand sewing. It's so hard to explain panto to people, isn't it? Iron duckling. And it's been a massive part of my career as well. I've done so many pantos and sewn so many things for pantos. And I'm like, how do I explain this to Americans? Are there any crafts that you do not share them on your YouTube channel that I do? Are there any crafts I do that I don't share? I suppose I crochet a little bit. Baking. Got a bit enthusiastic with the old hands there. This is why I normally need a project. Let's make another pom-pom. I haven't done a lot of baking for a while because it involves standing up, but I do like to bake. Apart from that, I think it's just the knitting and the sewing and the crocheting. So I mostly share what I do on YouTube, to be fair, but not the baking. Debbie says, as a quilter, I get instant gratification every time I finish a block. That's true. That's true. People are recommending cheap fabric, use old bedding, things you find in charity shops or thrift shops as toile material. Yep, I do that all the time. Somebody's recommended watching commercial sewists on YouTube because you learn a lot about efficiency and high quality results. Is that PermaPen UK? Yeah, I agree. You know those like reels or shorts, and there's people on industrial machines and they do things in an incredibly efficient way, like their bias binding and things. I learn a lot from those because the way I was taught to sew was not that way. Somebody loves my vintage overalls. Thank you. They're actually 90s vintage overalls, which is weird. But yeah, they're so spot on for 40s. I was going to make myself some, and then I found those online on Vinted or Depop or something, and I was like, they'll do. How many pom-poms are we up to? 4. 4 pom-poms. Here they are. I'll try and make another one. I think I'll do one last one because it's nearly 9 o'clock, and then I think we'll call it a day. Oh, I've had some lovely messages. Thank you. Lots of people have mentioned my videos, how they've helped them and things. I really appreciate that. Good morning from Australia. Yeah, good morning. Have I read any good books this year? I've read 3 books this year, and that's it. It's one of those brain fog things that I've been struggling with, and I haven't been listening to audiobooks because I haven't been doing any sewing. So the last book I finished was in February, and it was The Essex Serpent, and I did really enjoy it. So I can recommend that one. It was very atmospheric and Victoriana, my sort of thing. Somebody tried to make my coconut dessert in the cookbook. Yeah, Costume Cooks. It was a disaster. I'm so sorry. But yeah, coconut ice is a sort of traditional British sweet, and I contributed the recipe to, I think it was Yule from who's you may know is a deaf YouTuber in the costume community, and she makes beautiful aesthetic sort of ASMR sewing videos. And she ran a little collaboration where we all contributed a recipe, and I contributed a traditional British sweets, which was peppermint creams and coconut ice, which is delicious and sort of the taste of my childhood. But I'm sorry, Paulina, that they they didn't work out for you. Oh, somebody found my channel from those early sewing videos. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Yeah, it was one of those. I was at the time I was teaching in person, and people kept asking me, do you have a video on this so I can remember it when I go home? And I kept being like, no. I kept thinking to myself, oh, I really need to learn how to make videos, don't I? And so that's what I started doing. And then COVID hit, and I was like, well, everything else has dried up. Let's try this. And that's how I got into doing YouTube. So it's one of those things. I'm glad I learned how to do it before COVID hit. I think I was a little bit ahead of the game there. Oh, apple crumble. Oh, delicious. Maybe a straight country road. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, about the watching things? A lot of people watch things in the background, but I find, I don't know, maybe I'm too foggy. If I miss something important, I have no idea what's going on. And like I really appreciate the quiet in my studio. Now I have my little studio here to just come in and have a bit of a break from the world and sit quietly and be with my own thoughts. I also have a theory. There's no evidence for this. It's just my personal experience. My anxiety as a teenager got a lot better when my headphones broke. And I think it was just because I spent my entire time everywhere I went with headphones in. And then I was forced to be alone with my own thoughts and sort of contemplate my own thoughts and face reality a bit more as a result of that. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to my mental health, to just sit and be alone with my thoughts on the school bus, which is not ideal for everybody. And it was hard at first. But yeah, and I still now really love a long train journey or a long bus journey for that reason, because I'm like, yes, I just get to sit and be alone with my thoughts, which is a weird thing about me, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, having things on in the background isn't for everybody. So if that's you, good for you. If you've always got something on, you do you, boo, you know. Did I watch the Essex Serpent show? No, probably not, because I'm not subscribed to any streaming services apart from Netflix. So if it was on Netflix, if it wasn't on Netflix, I haven't seen it, basically. So yeah, and I don't watch a massive amount of TV. Yeah, trouser fitting. Somebody would like advice on trouser fitting. It's not my strong point. And most of the trousers I've made have been for men, so I've fit them on other people. But fitting trousers on, you know, a male body or a traditionally male body, it's very different. So I haven't braved it for myself yet. Right, I think this is the last pom-pom team. Yeah, other people, I suppose, if your brain works differently and you need like I have a mate with ADHD and he always has to have something on, and I can understand that, you know, whatever makes you happy, whatever works for you. But I'm the sort of person, I like the quiet. I'm so pleased with my little pom-poms. Thank you all for joining me. Maybe we'll do a last call for questions. So if you have any burning questions, you've got 5 minutes, get them in. And I'll sit here and talk through them at the end. As I play with my really cute pom-poms. Look at them. Aren't they sweet? I'm pretty certain they're an inch. Yeah, they look about an inch. Hopefully Nanny will be able to use them. So yeah, 5 pom-poms total. Ta-da! I love these ones with the this is Serdar Connemara, which is discontinued, but I think they look absolutely great. This one is not so great, but I'll give it a steam and see what happens. So let's have a look at my questions coming in. How's my Bernina sewing machine? Well, it got rained on the other day. I have a skylight up here and we've been having a lot of torrential rain and it leaked. I had a real panic. I was like, my £1,000 sewing machine. But it seems to be all right. So it survived a brief shower. And I'm really pleased with it. I'm really enjoying using it. It was worth it to have the knee lift, which has changed my life, really. And I don't use the start-stop button as much as I thought I would. I think because to get the pace, it's just a frustratingly slow pace, really, when I do it at that, and it's a little bit terrifying to use the speed dial and turn it right the way up and have to press the button. It feels like my fingers are too near the needle. So I've been using the pedal. But yeah, the knee lift, and it's all those other reliable Bernina things that I'm used to. Part of the reason why I went for it was just because I've used Berninas since all the time, basically, since I learned to sew. So it's just familiarity. I know which buttons to press. It's got all the features I want and need. It's heavy duty enough to deal with professional costuming stuff that comes in, because sometimes I do occasionally get, like when I make those Tudor cloaks, I have to sew through a lot of braid, and it always handles that with aplomb, really. Anything you're looking forward to in 2023? Well, I'm really looking forward to doing my 1840s project and going to the Prior Retire ball. I went to Moggahanger in 2021, the 1830s weekend, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to the ball in April. I was a little bit optimistic about maybe how much dancing and walking and standing about I'd be able to do. So we'll see. I might have to take it a bit gentler than I did at Moggahanger. I was very lucky. I had a very good window of health leading up to Moggahanger in October. And so I was able to do quite a lot and paid for it afterwards, of course. But I'm really glad I was able to do it. So I might have to take a slightly different approach at the ball. But I'm really excited as well. I'm a Victorianist at heart, so I haven't really done much Victorian costuming. And I'm excited to do that in 2023. Oh, also the 1605 witch, which I designed like 2 years ago now, and I just haven't been able to make. And it's supposed to be a Halloween project, and every year Halloween rolls around and something else is happening and I can't make it. And I've got all the fabrics. I've knitted that shawl, I've knitted the stockings, and they've been sat in a box waiting to go for 2 years now. And so 2023, I'm going to make it happen. Because my first love was Elizabethan costuming or Elizabethan dress. That was what really, I wrote my undergrad dissertation on the politics of it, the power, symbolism of Elizabethan dress, female dress and things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited to get back to that era. Have I seen Wednesday on Netflix? No, I haven't. Somebody says, if I sat alone with my thoughts, my mental health would fall apart even more. Lol. Yeah, I understand. I understand. But actually, it gave me time to think about what I wanted and why I felt like that. And that was enabled me to make decisions and become a better person and get out of situations and things like that. So I understand where you're coming from. But, you know, I think that is part of, we're always, all of us, go, go, go all the time, and we never rest. There's always something happening. We're always on our phones. And it's a perpetual stress response, I think, basically, or it was for me. And taking time to just sort of breathe and check in with myself was very useful. Is the foot lifter helpful, or do you forget that you have it? I do forget that I have it. And then I use it again. And I'm like, what are you doing? Remember to use the bloody the knee lift. It's so good. So, but then I forget a lot of things. So, you know, but once I remember to use it, oh, it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. As well, I don't know, this on my new machine as well, the spring for the foot is really new and fresh, and so it's kind of like, oh, it really snaps into place. So using the knee lifter is much more enjoyable. Is the studio detached from the house? No, it isn't. So my studio it used to be our garage, and we have a door from the garage into the house, and so the other side of this wall is the rest of the garage with the garage door and all of that. So I have a little space, but yeah, it's not very big in here. And it's one of those things, this is one thing I wanted to mention actually, people are very kind in offering to send me things. I get messages daily about people offering to send me vintage patterns, fabric, yarn, all sorts of things. And I really appreciate it, but I have no space. I literally cannot take anything more. So it's very kind of you to think of me, and I really appreciate it, but please stop offering me things because the temptation is too much. Where do I buy my yarn? Lots of places, a lot of places online. Wool Warehouse is a big go-to for me. I also go to Yak in Brighton, which is an independent yarn store. And I used to go to their knit night, and they're a bit more modern, trendy knitting. But often I go to the big places online because I don't have a lot of money and they're cheap, and they send me discount codes and things like that. Love Crafts. What's the other one called? That's going to bug me now. Anyway, oh, Black Sheep, something like that. Black Sheep Wools, something like that. I buy online. Not ideal. And sometimes it turns up and it's not what I was expecting, but oh well. Oh yeah, good stash busting with the pom-poms, £2. I think it might be more like 2 grams, but I might do a few more off camera and send them to Nanny and use up a few more odd ends. Yeah, I don't even think these will count towards the total. Did Victorian ladies ever wear trousers? I swear I saw a video of a lady getting into a carriage wearing them. Did they wear trousers? Not in the way that we consider trousers, no. There was a rational dress movement in America, in North America in the 1850s with Amelia Bloomer, Bloomerism. I think Abby Cox made a video about this, where women wore what they sort of considered to be Eastern style harem pants under shorter dresses, and little girls would wear pantaloons, and they were highly decorated. These were not joined at pantaloons were split crotch though. They weren't joined at the crotch. So towards the end of the 19th century, you do start to see ladies riding breeches, and they are cycling breeches and horse riding breeches and things like that. And they do have a joined crotch seam, and but they wouldn't they wouldn't wear them out, if that makes sense. They were sort of for a purpose or for an activity, and plenty of women did not wear them. So did they ever wear trousers? And there's this kind of like myth about like aestheticism and the rational dress movement and things. Most women, you know, it would be like, we're talking probably about like 0.1% of the population of women were probably wearing some sort of trouser in the Victorian era. What was I going to make with the crochet stars? I don't know. I think they're really ugly. This is another one I had. I don't like them at all, so I might frog them and try something else with them. So I don't know. Send me ideas. Oh. Oh my goodness, it's skipped so far. Lots of people love their baninas and then knee lift levers. Yeah. They haven't helped with the destashing, not really, but that was the idea. So my knee lift bar is to lift the presser foot, but I have also used one where the knee is instead of a pedal to make it go. I've used an industrial machine in that sense. I don't like that as much because I find that having to continually engage my leg is really tiring on the muscle and I get cramp. So I've tried it. I'm not a fan. A stop button has been a game changer for me. I have limited leg strength and now I don't have to use my legs at all. Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of the reason I'm glad I got that Benina. I have the option should anything happen to my legs, which is unlikely, but you never know. Somebody says, I tried to look up the 1890s Liberty dress, but couldn't find anything. There's one in the Met. And in my Enola Holmes video, I made a video in my early days of YouTube about the costumes in Enola Holmes, mostly because I was seeing a lot of really bad reviews of the costumes in the film. And I kind of made a sort of, they're not that bad, actually. You just don't know about aestheticism, this sort of video. So I talk about it a bit more in that video. They're part of the aesthetic movement. So they're very relaxed, smocking, embroidered. Liberty is the department store in London that made them, and they're a very iconic silhouette and style from this moment, this very specific moment in time. And they were popular in Britain and America. I don't know if there are any in France or continental Europe, maybe. Would you consider making reproduction dress from a modern pattern and show us how to make it the way it would have originally been made? I sort of did that with my 1950s dress that I made from a 1959 pattern. I made it using more traditional couture methods. I hand over cast the seams, things like that. But are you talking about a modern style dress, I suppose, as opposed to a reproduction vintage pattern? And also, it hasn't changed that much. That's one of the things about vintage sewing is I look at vintage sewing patterns and I'm like, yeah, this is all the same techniques that you would do anyway. And some of the with very slight differences, like they don't often put zips in things just because zips were new and expensive. And so they put a placket in instead. So then it's really not that different, which is one of the things I think about if you want to try vintage sewing. You probably will be fine. You probably know what you're doing. You just have to decipher the weird non-printed pattern pieces. Happy New Year, everybody. Are hand crank machines hard to work on? I have one and I don't use it because I find it so tiring. That might just be me. I have used them when I was stronger, and I don't remember it being particularly difficult. They're sort of the mechanism. It's kind of smooth, actually. It's not like you really have to crank it. You sort of turn it, and something about the way it runs rubberized, and so it's quite smooth. So about Denise, I hope that helps. I've only ever knit with acrylic. Any recommendations on what fiber would be the next step? I'd try a wool blend, an acrylic wool blend. That's how this is one of the first things I made that wasn't acrylic, and it's a wool blend. And it's cheaper, so if it goes wrong, it's not so bad. And also it's more familiar to work with and behaves more like acrylic, but you have some of the texture of wool. Lots of people helping each other out in the chat. I love to see that. Thanks, team. Yeah, I don't like knitting with cotton. A lot of people are recommending cotton. I personally don't like it, but it feels very tacky to me, and kind of makes me go, ugh. You know, some people can't touch cotton wool. I'm not like that, but I understand why they are after knitting with cotton. I did knit my lovely grey sweater. I also knit this pink one, and I also made the dress underneath. Not that you can see it. It's a jersey dress. It's a very simple pattern. It's a modern one. What's the pattern company called? I can't remember. Sorry. Would you ever have a Patreon? I have considered it. However, given if you've been around here for a little while, you will know that I am prone to disappearing for months on end because my health is unpredictable. And I would feel uncomfortable about taking people's money every month and they don't get anything in return because I've had to take 3 months off either for work or for my health or something like that. So I do have a couple of Ko-fi supporters who donate regularly. So that is an option, but no pressure, you know, and if you know what you're getting yourself into, I think if I were to set up a Patreon, there's an expectation of reciprocity, you know, you're getting something for your money. And I don't know if I can deal with the pressure of that. Yeah, somebody's mentioning the walk away dress. I know Stephanie Canada's done a massive series on that, and there's been a big collaboration, which I've thoroughly enjoyed watching. So I can recommend that if you're interested in the difference between reproduction and vintage patterns. Somebody's asked me if I would consider having a tip jam. I don't know what that is. Oh, you can pause Patreon, people are telling me. I didn't know that. That changes things. I might consider it. I'll have a look. It depends how much work it is. And I have to weigh up the pros and the cons carefully, you know. Oh, somebody asked earlier about 1930s Tunisian crochet patterns. I've seen a 1930s Tunisian crochet swimsuit that I want to try. That's why I want to try Tunisian crochet. Because that looks interesting, and you know I'm a sucker for anything that is a bit wacky. So I'd love to give that a go. Tip jar. Oh, I see. Tip jar. Well, I don't have a tip jar, but I always have my my Ko-fi account listed in the description, and that's a similar thing where you can give a one-off tip and buy a cup of coffee, Ko-fi, tea in my case. Oh yeah, it's in my Ravelry project. Thanks for the reminder, Kate. Yes, if you are a knitter and you're interested, I've made 2 versions of this, although I don't have any pictures of the green one. And I keep meaning to, every time I wear it, I'm like, I need to take pictures of this green version for Ravelry, and I always forget. But if you are a Ravelry user, you can look at my projects on Ravelry, and these are both there. And I'm actually the featured photograph for this pattern as well now on Ravelry, so that's nice. Yeah. Okay, 9:20. I think that's long enough. Thank you very much for joining us, team. I hope you had fun in our little crafty party. It wasn't particularly party vibes today. I hope that's all right. It was a gentle craft night, cozy vibes. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me today and through this mad journey that has been Retro Claude on YouTube. I never thought this would happen. Wow, we hit 25,000 subscribers this year. Madness. I really appreciate all your support and feedback. I really hope you've been enjoying Clodmas. I've had a lot of lovely comments about it, and it will become, as somebody suggested in the comments, this is absolute genius, Claude Langsyne. Love it. Absolutely love it. Genius. So I'll be carrying on with my 1940s suit. There is also, you're the first to know, a stash busting video coming tomorrow, 5 o'clock GMT. Sorry, I don't know what that is in your nearest time zone. But yeah, so there will be another stash busting installment coming tomorrow. So hopefully that will keep you going into the new year when we get back to some sewing content. So thank you once again for joining me. Happy New Year. I'm happy holidays if you've been celebrating as well. And I really hope I'll see you then. See you in 2023. Mwah. Bye.